Call HALALYAM la YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI BAHASHAM RAWCHAA QADASH Mashanakabad Laha Shalach Yayam Wazakwanyam shall great millstone that rule well and teach well. Shalom wa Barakyam al Habachayar Adawan Rajaza, we're a part of that number. This is your brother and fellow servant Arya from the GMS Orlando camp, and I want to do a lesson on Revelation, the 9th chapter, from verses 1 to 12. Alright, and this is dealing with World War I. Alright. So Revelation chapter 9 verse 1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So this star that fell from heaven is going into Kaiser Wilhelm II. Kaiser basically being the German word for Caesar, basically meaning, king, all right, or the leader, the ruler. So he is that star that fell from heaven, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So the scriptures will mention the bottomless pit a couple times in Revelation, and it is pretty much always referring to Europe. All right, because Europe generally, well, let's go into this first, and then we'll go a little bit more into Kaiser Wilhelm. So when you go to the word bottomless, and it's abusos or abyssos, abyss, right? Where you get that word abyss. It says bottomless, the abyss, the pit, immeasurable depth, and then the last thing is some mythology they're going off. When you go into the root word, bottom, depth, okay, there's somewhere where it goes into because sometimes they'll take it out, they'll change up the Blue Letter Bible, but when you go into the root word, it would have also said something about extreme poverty or a lack of resources. But we know that Esau loves to change stuff around, to hide information. But what you're going to see now is just going to say abyss or bottomless, the pit, right? But it's there's a root word that's supposed to go into poverty or extreme poverty or lack of resources. Then also when you go into 2nd Ezra chapter 5 and verse 24, it says, and of all lands of the whole world thou hast chosen thee one pit, and of all the flowers thereof one lily. So this is just to substantiate the fact that lands are sometimes referred to as pits, or they can be referred to as pits, all right? Because obviously the land that the Heavenly Father chose is the land of Israel, right? Jerusalem. But that's not a pit. In fact, we're referred to as a city set on a hill. We're referred to as a monument. So that's the opposite of a pit. So that just shows you that that word is in reference to lands. Now, like I said, they probably took it out, so it's not there, but the word goes into, extreme poverty or lack of resources. Let me check pit real quick. And they'll leave the mythology shit. They'll leave that, but they will take out things that will, they'll take out the things that actually make sense. But anyway, so let's go into Kaiser Wilhelm II. So this is the guy, former German emperor, right? If you want to pause it, read any of this. What is Kaiser Wilhelm II best known for? He's best known as the last German emperor whose aggressive foreign policy and naval expansion escalated tensions leading to World War I. That's why I said that this guy, this star, was given the key to the bottomless pit, right? Because he's the one that pretty much triggered World War I. His actions led to the escalation and the start of World War I. He's recognized for his volatile, militaristic, and often tactless public, which alienated foreign powers, and for his eventual abdication in 1918. And there's a little more information, but that's pretty much the point, right? Verse 2, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So the pit smoking and darkening was the onset of World War I. And verse 3, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. The locust, right, is going into the dogfighter jets and planes, right? Because John the Revelator, as he's being given this vision by BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, he's describing everything that he's seeing in the best way that he could by using similitudes. Okay, so he's saying that out of the smoke, right, from as World War I began, he's seeing visions of how everything went down, right? And he's seeing locusts upon the earth, right? And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power, right? And what do scorpions do? They sting, right? So these are basically these dogfighter planes, and they had two passengers, I guess. Well, they're not passengers, but for lack of a better word, you had one that was piloting, then there was another one sitting in the back that had control of the gun. All right, before you had them automatic missiles that just come out the bottom of like a fighter jet and whatnot, you had a guy that actually had to be on there manning the automatic weapon that was on there, aiming at different jets. That's why they were called dog fighters. Okay, verse 4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of the Most High in their forehead. So, nature wasn't targeted, nature wasn't affected much, right? It's not like it wasn't like you deal with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nature was definitely affected. They dropped them bombs, and to this day, I believe there's still places where you can get radiation poisoning. The wildlife is affected. There's certain beasts that can survive and even thrive in radioactive, poison environments, but for the most part, they're still, containing. Oh, well, look at Chernobyl as well. It's the same thing, where there was a freak accident, and they said it's going to take like 100 years, 2100 something, or 2080 something, around that range, until it's all completely taken care of. You know what I'm saying? So the grass of the earth was not hurt, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which were mostly Edomites, okay, including casualties of war, those that may not have been directly involved but were affected by the World War One. Okay, men which have not the seal of the Most High in their foreheads. Now you had Jake, but they weren't heavily involved in the war, right? And then, of course, the elect were preserved. Grandparents or an elect member in their past lifetime, they were not. They were preserved. You see what I'm saying? You had the Harlem Hellfighters, which consisted of Jakes, right? And they had about 200,000 soldiers, and only 42,000 of them saw combat. So much less, not even half, right? So Jake wasn't really up in the mix like that. This was mostly, that's why we say, Esau, Edom, Jake may have beef in the hood and things like that on a very small scale, relatively. Esau has world wars of a so-called white-on-white crime, So verse 5, and to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And this 5 months is really going into the 5 years that World War I lasted. Okay? A lot of Edomites were shot to death, gunned down and whatnot. But a lot of them survived, right? And you think, with a World War I, World War II, that Esau would, do a lot of damage, and they did, but that wasn't, their end. Obviously, they're still ruling to this day, so they didn't, completely do away with themselves, right? But the ones that survived, they ended up with PTSD. Well, before it was called PTSD, before you understood post-traumatic stress disorder, the doctors, the people, they would diagnose them, or they would not diagnose, but they would charge them, these guys that were shell-shocked, they would charge them with mutiny or cowardice. Okay? Like how we joke about, you got a veteran, you drop a book, and they hear that loud bang, and they start tripping, they start bugging out because of that PTSD, because of, they lived years on the battlefield. So they're traumatized. They cannot really adapt back to a normal life, where it's all types of, especially in this society, an industrial society like this, all types of shit going on. You're through. They were shell-shocked, so they were tormented. During the war and after, right? And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man, right? So again, they were gunned down. A lot of them were gunned down. A lot of them dealt with torment, plague of the mind, like poison. Okay? Verse 6, and in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it. We use this scripture describing Jacob's trouble and what's going to come upon, 2/3 and the rest of the heathen nations. But this is really going into that shell shock, that PTSD, that torment of coming home from visceral, vicious war, and you got to just go about your life like it's normal. And then these guys, they didn't, understand the effects of heavy duty trauma like that, and how it can change your mental composition. And they were calling them cowards. They were charging them, imprisoning them, and whatnot. So it was horrible for these Edomites. All right. And we don't feel sorry for them. So it says, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And a lot of them actually did try to off themselves, and they just couldn't do it. A lot of them failed. A lot of them hospitalized, missing limbs and whatnot, and they just had to live like that. Verse 7, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. Right? In ancient war, when horses would be prepared unto battle, they would be in formation. They would ride out in ranks. Right? That's how the dogfighter jets would be assembled and fly to go war with each other. All right, it said, like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns of gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. Now you had dealing with these soldiers, these German soldiers, they had what's called pickelhaubes, which were helmets that were they had a horsehair attached to it, and they were very well decorated. Matter of fact, I'll look it up real quick. So these were pickelhaubes, a spiked helmet introduced in 1842 by Prussia, served as a protective and symbolic headgear for German soldiers, firefighters, and police until 1916. Primarily made of lacquered leather with metal fittings, brass or steel. It was designed to deflect saber blows, though often served ceremonial roles due to its unpopularity, eventually replaced by the steel Stahlhelm. So not only were they, helmets for protection, but they were, like I said, symbolic as well. So these were those different designs that they had on them. And some of them, they had horsehair attached to it, which is going to go into in the next verse. Yeah. So this is the design that they helmets had. So going back, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns of gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And then also these World War I planes. Let me see, World War I dog fights. Let's look that up. They had these planes that had different designs as well. There was one in particular with an actual face painted on it. If it comes up, see if I can find it. Yeah, there's one. These were those the designs on some of these dogfighter planes during World War I. Yeah, and they would fly in rank like this, like horses prepared unto battle, right? These are a bunch of different ones. And then I also want to see if I can find where yeah, see, there's the gun at the back. Some of them had one, some of them were one-seaters, some of them were two. These are one, looks like. Well, no, that one looks like, the one in the middle looks like two, because there's a gun in the front and a gun in the back. But yeah, aircrafts of World War I, 1914 to 18. Yeah, man. Verse 8, and they had hair as the hair of women, going into the horsehair that they would attach to the helmets. And that also proves that long hair intrinsically is feminine, because why would John the Revelator describe it like that? And then Apostle Paul also said, is it not known, right? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it's a shame unto him, right? So that's proof right there. Because why would he say hair like the hair of women? It's not like women have different hair than men. It's hair, but he's referring to the length of it, right? And their teeth were as the teeth of lions, right? Again, going into the symbolic designs of the helmets, not only the helmets, but mainly the dogfighter jets. All right. And then you had men that were piloting it. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, like how we described the well, this is going into the actual jets, right? That is the makeup of these dogfighter jets. Let me see. They had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron. So let's look this up. Metalwork. All right. World War I fighter planes mostly used wood and fabric construction, but metalwork was crucial for structural strength and pioneering all metal designs. Key metal components included welded steel tube fuselages, aluminum engine cowling, and tension steel wire bracing. Later in the war, duralumin, an early aluminum alloy, was introduced for stronger fire-resistant structures, culminating in the first all-metal aircraft like the Junkers JI. Right. So they use, steel, armored steel, different metal plating and whatnot to reinforce the planes. And there's another example of the pilot and then the gunner in the back. All right, like a scorpion. Okay. So these were the breastplates of iron and whatnot, the metalwork of the planes. And then the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running into battle. So this is it was very loud, because this was before you had airplane mufflers. The one that invented the first airplane muffler was El Dorado Jones, which I believe was like some Edomite woman. El Dorado Jones. Yeah, talking about women's rights and all that shit. Yep, who invented the airplane muffler? 1860, known for developing the first successful exhaust muffler for airplane engines. So she did that in what, 1919? This is all a bunch of women's rights shit, but whatever. But yeah, she invented the first airplane muffler in 1919, around then, to reduce the loudness of the sound pressure of these jets and planes and whatnot. Verse 10, and they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. Again, those were the stings was the gunner in the back seat, and then the 5 months was really going into 5 years. All right, the 5 years that World War I lasted. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, right? Like we read in verse 1, saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Verse 11, They had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. That was, again, Kaiser Wilhelm II, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Abaddon, that means destruction, and or abad in the ancient Hebrew, destroy or destruction. And then Apollyon, that means the same thing, destroyer. Yeah. Is Abaddon. In the NLT, it's saying their king is the angel from the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, Apollyon, the destroyer. That's something that, they probably can't change. Yeah, destruction. Abad. Apollyon, destroyer. Yeah. Also some information on this guy. Like we read in the AI overview or in the Google search, he was Germany's last king before the Weimar Republic. All right. That's something to note because he was a king, right? They never had a monarchy after Kaiser Wilhelm II. Okay? After him, they had the Weimar Republic. And I remember reading some information on it, and that pretty much led to Nazi Germany, long story short. Okay? Because after World War I ended in 1918, they had to implement the Treaty of Versailles or Versailles or whatever. Let me look it up. Treaty of Versailles. This was a heavy blow to Germany, right? It aimed to establish lasting peace, but primarily forced Germany to accept full responsibility for the war, pay massive reparations, disarm its military, and cede territory, creating lasting resentment, right? So that came in 1919. They suffered harsh penalties, and it caused internal instability and gave rise to Hitler, which Germans viewed Hitler as a savior. All right. He was called their Führer, which Führer, what does Führer mean? Leader. Okay. Guide, driver. So when you consider what Germany went through with that, and really it wasn't even, they were taking responsibility for some shit that that really wasn't even on them like that in the first place. You had Wilhelm II, he was ultimately that catalyst, right? But there were other factors at play where I believe Germany was really trying to help out some of its allies, and they ended up being put in the spotlight the most, because we look back, or at least we're taught that Germany was the bad guys and they initiated everything and they were antagonists, but that's not even really how it went down. But nevertheless, they ended up having to take all the responsibility pretty much, and a great loss of land. So you can see how that led to Nazi Germany taking over with Hitler, and the things that he would say. If you look at some of his speeches, he wasn't just some madman doing it just because. You also, when you consider that Amalekites were living amongst the Germans, right? And if you know by now, Lord's will, you should know Amalek and how they get down. And one historical fact that's echoed and reverberated across a lot of different sources is that they were repeatedly kicked out from places they were living in. Why? Because Amalek, that's the chief house of Edom. They the bottom of the barrel. I mean, if Esau Edom is the basis of men, Amalek, they the worst of the worst. Okay? They brought about moral decay, decadence, all types of, transformer, LGBT activity, hedonism, if you will, where they also, a lot of them held influential and powerful positions during the Weimar Republic as well. People love to say like, oh, them Germans, blah blah blah. No, a lot of them, they was trying to live with these Amalekites. But that just shows you, Esau is always divided against himself. They don't even get along with each other. No one really gets along with Amalek. So, this guy, Hitler, he's like, man, look at what's happened to our country. Look at the shit that we have to deal with as a result of, losing this war. And now we got these monsters living amongst us and influencing and destroying our society in the worst way, right? That led to the Nazis. That led to, all these things that went down. And this is history. You can look this up. All right. I had this one article. Man, I wish I could find it. I don't remember the name of it. Matter of fact, give me a second. I found it. So and while looking also, if you just look up Weimar culture on Google, a lot of different things is going to pop up. One of them was hedonism, sex, and fear. Why Weimar culture is so influential today. There was one on Quora. Somebody asked, why was the Weimar Republic so degenerate? Okay, so a lot of these, it was known for that, and this explains a bit why, right? So Weimar culture and its reputation for decadence, right? Just scanning through it a bit, they praise the influence of the visual arts, the theater, the progressiveness of sexuality and all this shit, experimentation, blah blah blah. Look at that. It said, in German art, experimentation in German art came to an end when the Nazis came to power in 1933. Hitler rejected modern art as morally corrupt, and many of the best German artists, some of whom were Jewish, fled abroad. Now, they're not going to give you all the information, but we know what it is, all right? They have to maintain that this dude was the devil incarnate, that he was the main villain. When in reality, let's just say he was a proud German. Okay? You can't even say too much on it, because they're gonna call you a denier. They're gonna pull the anti-SIM card. I'm gonna let the article speak though, for the most part. They praising a lot of the film and media and arts and stuff. Reputation for decadence. After World War I, Berlin became a place where behavior previously thought of as immoral flourished. And is that not a parallel to today? Why are all the owners of, these top guys in like porn, the originators of pornography and the companies behind it, a lot of they're pretty much all Amalekites. These weirdos in Hollywood that are in control of what gets put out. Telling Jake to put on dresses and all this weird shit. It's Amalek behind all of it. Now we're in a time where, because remember, I remember, I'm a young brother. I remember growing up, there would be those conspiracy theory videos. The Ish people are behind it all and blah 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 blah. Now we coming to understand, all the facts is coming out that this shit was true. So Amalek been on this type of time. Okay? It says cabarets became known as places where transvestites and openly gay men and women could visit, despite homosexuality being illegal at the time. Prostitution, which had grown during World War I, flourished. The city acquired a reputation for drug dealing. Organized crime and gangs called Ringverein grew. Weimar's reputation for decadence and excess did not continue into the Nazi period. The Nazis disapproved of what they viewed as the immoral behavior flourishing in Germany's cities. Is that not objectively immoral? The totalitarian nature of the regime meant that cultural life such as the theater, music, and film came under the control of Goebbels' Ministry of Propaganda. In addition, many of the leading lights of German cultural and academic life were Jewish, and thus left Germany as the Nazis began to restrict their rights. Coincidence? I think not. All right. So that's what led to that. That's what happened after World War I. And that's just, it's something that you have to, have some knowledge of, because that is, you see that Amalek really are like the main ones, bringing about that, like they said, moral decay, decadence, hedonism. Okay, they be the main ones that are pushing, godlessness and wickedness against all that is called God, all that is holy, all that is righteous. Esau, Edom as a whole is guilty, but when even other Edomites have a problem, how is that serious, But I just wanted to go into Revelation 9 and 1 through 12. Verse 12, it says, "One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter," showing you that the woes are referring to the world wars. All right, that was World War I. Then 2 woes come after. We had World War II. Now we're coming into World War III. All right, and World War II came 20 years and 9 months later in 1939, and the Nazis played a part in it, a big part in it, So, and then the end of World War II, that played a key role in elevating Babylon, America, to the spot that it came into, that it, where it is today. But I just wanted to go into that. Lord's will was edifying. Just wanted to go straight to the point, not make it too long. Hey, double honors unto the apostles and elders, great millstone, and rule well and teach well. Shalom wa barakim al habachayar. I don't want to write we're part of that number. And blessings, honor, glory, and power be unto YAHAWAH, YAHAWASHI, Thamiyad, wa Allah, HALALYAM, always and forever. Shalom.